Hey everybody, I'm with Dr. Calum Miller, medical researcher and one of the most pro-life doctors that I know. He's very young but very experienced, and I wanted him to speak with us about the topic of abortion today, especially abortion as it exists in Singapore. So Cal, thank you for your time doing this. When it comes to abortion in Singapore, I think it's not widely known that Singapore allows for abortion up to about 24 weeks. In your experience, this is one of the more extreme regimes in the world?
It is. There are very few countries more extreme than that. I think they're China, Canada, parts of the US, formerly parts of, well, all of North Korea, and that's pretty much it. Maybe Vietnam, but it's hard to tell what the law is.
We don't seem to be keeping very good company when it comes to our abortion regime.
No, I mean, Canada's one of the worst countries in the world.
Yeah. So Canada is where in terms of...
Canada has no law at all. So Canada has, there's just no restriction.
Up to birth?
Yeah. And then of course China has a bad human rights record generally, and so Singapore is definitely way up there. The UK is level with it, but really it's one of the most extreme in the world. The average in the European Union is 12 weeks. So Singapore is actually double the European Union limit.
Yeah, and this is not a statistic that we want to be proud about topping the charts on, because we're basically killing children at advanced stages of gestation, right?
Exactly, yeah. These are babies that are viable after 21 weeks or so. They can feel pain, they're conscious and so on. And so it's really, really extreme, and there's no reason why you would ever need to abort them, given that they could survive outside of the womb. If you really need to deliver the baby, then just deliver the baby.
Right, right. Okay, so on that note, actually, in Singapore, I think generally people would balk at the idea of killing babies. It's just that most people don't recognize that these are babies that are being killed. Or at least they might be in denial, etc., etc. So I have prepared for you 6 quick fire questions about abortion, which are often posed to the pro-life camp as gotcha questions. I'm going to ask them to you in rapid succession. Take as much time as you want, but I'd love comprehensive answers if you don't mind, okay? So the first question is, abortion is medically necessary to save a woman's life?
Yeah, so we have statistics on this in the UK, because in the UK, when you do an abortion, you have to tell on a form what is the reason for an abortion legally, and we have certain legal reasons for abortion. One of those reasons is to save the mother's life, and that is less than, it's like 0.1% of abortions. So we have 250,000 abortions every year, 250,000, and of those, at most 100 are to save the life of the mother. So it's extremely, extremely rare. In those cases, of course, in most of them, you have to choose. The baby will pass away anyway, unfortunately. And so you don't have a choice between mother and baby. The choice is leave the pregnancy as it is, and both the mother and the baby will die, or remove the baby without deliberately killing it in order to at least save one life. And that's the large majority of those cases.
Now, I've heard that pro-life doctors call this preterm delivery or premature delivery as opposed to abortion, and they make that linguistic differentiation. Is that useful in your view?
Certainly after viability it is, because after viability, the baby can survive. And so you should, there's absolutely no reason why you should ever kill it, because the baby could survive outside the womb. All you need to do is deliver the baby and keep it alive, and that is a premature delivery.
Right.
Now, before viability, the baby can't survive.
Yeah.
So if you do deliver the baby, it will inevitably and sadly pass away.
Yeah.
And so really it's a linguistic debate. Some people call this abortion because the baby does die, even though you don't intend for that.
Yeah.
Some people say, well, because you never intended it, it's not even an abortion. And so pro-lifers even disagree on that, and it's partly a linguistic debate. What we can say for certain, and everyone agrees, is there are sadly some very, very rare cases where you have to deliver the baby for the mother to survive, and the baby passes away. But you never have to intentionally kill the child.
Right.
And so, that's the basic situation.
So in a nutshell, it is true that there are no known medical conditions that would necessitate killing the child, like actively killing the child in order to save the life of the mum. Would that be correct?
Yeah, there's no case where you need to intentionally kill the child. That would be completely unreasonable, unmedical, and so on.
And when you say no case, you mean no case.
There are no cases whatsoever where you need to deliberately kill the baby. There are cases where you need to deliver the baby and as a result the baby will pass away.
Yes.
But there are no cases where you need to actively kill the baby and deliberately kill the baby.
Yeah,
Not a single case ever.
I'm so glad for the clarity that you're bringing on this, because very often the issue is obfuscated, and there's a lot of linguistic games that go around this idea, and people try to excuse abortions on the basis of extreme circumstances. But it's nice to know definitively that there are no medical cases that warrant the killing of the child. Okay, second question, right? The second question is, abortion is a woman's right to bodily autonomy, right? My body, my choice. What's the best way that you know to kind of dismantle this idea?
I think we can dismantle this idea using what the majority of pro-choice people actually believe. Because if you ask any pro-choice person, do you support abortion for any reason up until birth? They will usually say no. You say, so there's a baby at 8 months, the baby is healthy, the mother is healthy, but the baby is a girl and the mother wanted a baby boy. Should you be allowed to have an abortion at 8 months? Almost everyone says no, that's not okay.
Yeah.
And then the question is, well, are you not then also limiting her bodily autonomy? You're limiting her choice, you're forcing her to give birth, whatever rhetoric you want to use. Ultimately, you're taking a pro-life position at that stage in pregnancy.
But it's an artificial line.
Exactly. So we actually believe the same thing. And you can then ask that person, well, why do you draw that line? And they might say, well, because it's a bad reason for abortion, or because it's a human being by then. And so then they are admitting that the real question is this a human being? We all agree that once it is a child, once it is a person or a human being, we shouldn't kill it. The only disagreement we have is about when that actually happens. You pick a kind of random point at 24 weeks where nothing happens of any moral significance to the baby.
In Singapore's case, right?
Exactly,
Yeah.
and the UK. Whereas we pick conception, which is when science and biology clearly show that a human being begins.
And when you say we, in this case, it would be the pro-life camp?
Pro-life people.
Right,
Exactly.
Right. Okay, thank you, Callum. Now, third question, if you don't mind. So the third one is one that I've heard many times. Making abortion illegal will lead to dangerous back alley abortions. Now, personally, I don't even think that this is going to be a thing because we regulate our medical fraternity quite rigorously. But how would you answer the back alley abortions question?
Yeah, so firstly, there's a moral component, which is that we should never take away someone's basic human rights for a sort of public policy reason. We would never say that, some Christians might be dangerous to other people or might kill other people, therefore we should be able to just kill Christians. There are basic human rights which are inviolable and can't be violated just for some kind of public health reason or public concern. But even beyond that, there's an empirical question. Is it really true that when you legalize abortion, it becomes safer and you have fewer women dying as a result? So I looked into this question. It's probably my main area of research over the last 5 years. I went through almost every country in the world that legalized abortion to look at the question of, when they legalized it, did more women die? Were there more abortions, or what actually happened? What we found is a very clear general trend, which is that there is virtually no country where they have banned abortion and women have started dying as a result. Poland banned abortion about 30 years ago, and they now have the lowest maternal mortality in the entire world. By contrast, there are no countries which legalized abortion and saw an improvement significantly in maternal mortality and maternal health. So ultimately, when we look at this question, we find that there are pro-life countries that fully protect unborn children from abortion, that have some of the best maternal health in the world, and they do not have any deaths from backstreet abortions, like Malta, Poland, the United Arab Emirates, previously South Korea, Ireland, and many others.
Great maternal health.
Wonderful. So Poland and Malta have the best in the world. Better than the US, better than France,
And
better
they are
than Germany, better
pro-life,
than
entirely
Singapore.
banned.
Poland is like 98% banned, but
Okay.
Malta is 100%. Malta's fully pro-life and it has had no maternal deaths in 12 years.
How very interesting.
By contrast, if you look at countries that are pro-choice, but they don't have good quality healthcare systems like India, Rwanda, Nepal, South Africa, they still have a huge number of women dying from backstreet abortions. Because it's not whether abortion is legal that makes a difference, It's whether you have a good quality healthcare system that can provide good emergency care. That is the number one thing that determines whether women die from backstreet abortion.
Would you then say that the lack of investment in maternal health care is directly correlated with the existence of abortion as a way out of needing to have a good maternal health care system?
It can be, and certainly when it comes to foreign aid funding that the UK government gives to other countries, instead of giving a lot to emergency obstetric care, we give a huge amount to abortion.
Right.
And things which really, there's an opportunity cost to everything. If you're spending money on abortion, you can't spend that money on obstetric care.
Right.
That's what we do, in the UK. I know Singapore has huge costs for giving birth, which partly explain the incredibly low fertility rate and the national crisis as a result. And so ultimately, abortion is always going to lead to those sorts of challenges, because if you're not supporting life, you're supporting the opposite. And if you're supporting, killing these children and aborting them, inevitably it's going to have an impact and a disincentive towards providing good maternal care as well.
Yeah, the inverse relationship is quite apparent actually. Okay, next question, Callum. Abortion is necessary for victims of rape and incest?
That's a big question, and it's not one we can quickly answer. There are many things I could say. I have friends who have been born as a result of rape, and they say to me, look, why should my life be less valuable than anyone else's? Are you telling me it's okay to abort me, but not to abort you? Ultimately, if we believe in human equality, we have to protect every child, no matter what circumstances they came to the world into, no matter how big they are, how independent they are, how useful they are. If we believe in human equality, we should protect every child, regardless of their parents or what their parents did. Now, there's another question of what about the woman? Is this catastrophic for the woman? Is it good for the woman? And really, there's not much specific evidence on this situation. The general evidence on mental health shows that a woman who has an abortion has much worse mental health than a woman who continues an unwanted pregnancy. There are 1 or 2 studies looking at pregnancy in cases of rape and incest. And what they generally find, again, is that there's no evidence that abortion helps. And when you think about it, this makes sense, because the primary problem is not the child. Most women who are the victims of rape never get pregnant. And are we thinking that they're okay because they never get pregnant? Of course not, because the fundamental problem is the trauma.
The violation
that is what we
of
have
the person.
to fix. The abortion won't solve that. And so when women who go through abortion say things like, this took away the only thing that could have helped me heal from that situation.
Wow.
Now, and this is a common idea among women who go through this. And so it's easy for me to say this, reading the literature, someone who's never been in this position. I gave this talk in Indonesia to a kind of far left political party. Very, you'd expect them to be the feminist side, the pro-choice side, etc. And the woman who is in charge of their women's division came up to me afterwards, and I thought, she's going to be so mad at me for giving my answer on this question. And she actually said, I believed every word you said about abortion in cases of rape. And I said, why is that? And she said, because it happened to me. My husband victimized me, raped me many, many times, and I became pregnant. And that child is the only reason I am in politics today, fighting for a better future for my country. If I didn't have this child, I do not know where my life would be, but it would be terrible. But this child is the only thing that gave me hope, and I believed everything you said as a result. The child brings hope. It doesn't reinforce the trauma.
Yeah. In fact, the child would give somebody a reason to live.
Exactly.
Yeah, and abortion doesn't unrape a woman.
Right.
Thank you, Callum. Okay, next one then. Abortion prevents disabled children from suffering. So there are many ways that people could suffer, either through fetal abnormality, being born without a brain, all of that stuff. They're extremely difficult cases, right? Why would abortion not be the more merciful choice in situations of difficulty?
Yeah, I mean, part of the question is, where do you stop? And the Netherlands has asked that question, and the Netherlands for many years had infanticide for disabled babies, because they said if these babies really are suffering, and we've admitted that the choice of the baby doesn't matter, then let's kill newborn babies, or at 6 months, or however old they might be. And so the logic means that you have to support infanticide as well. Now, often this sort of science behind this is very dubious. So I've read cases where a judge has said, this baby should be taken off life support because they have no quality of life because they're unconscious, but also they're in excruciating pain. And this is just a blatant contradiction. If they're completely unconscious, they can't be in excruciating pain. And so often we just sort of project these ideas in a scientifically unrealistic way. The reality is, however much we might feel intuitively about a kind of disability, we have very good palliative care, we have very good hospice care, both for adults and for children. And really, when you speak to neonatal palliative physicians, they do not think that abortion is the answer to this because they have seen it in reality. They know that these symptoms can be controlled, that there is very high quality hospice care available, especially in countries like the UK or in Singapore, which are very wealthy, affluent countries. And so ultimately, when we speak to the experts in this area, I have personally never heard any of them say that we just cannot fix these children, we cannot relieve their suffering, and they'd be better off dead. I've never heard it as a medical professional.
In cases, you mentioned the wealth of Singapore. This is something that many Singaporeans consider a very hard-earned part of their lifestyles. And palliative care for children who are born with almost no prospects for ordinary living, extreme dystrophy or neuroencephaly. How would you justify the expenditure of a lifetime worth of savings to sink into a child with no prospects? Because I can imagine that that's what some Singaporeans might think, right? So how would one approach that from that angle?
Yeah, I would say firstly, values are costly. They can cost financially, they can be sacrificial, but they're more important than anything else in the world. And ultimately, if you have lived your whole life accumulating a lot of wealth, but you have killed your child, can you really say that it was a life well lived? I don't think I could say that.
So the ultimate question is what is the price that you would put on your own values?
Exactly, and on your child. So there's another part to this though, which is just self-interested, which is we have evidence on mental health outcomes in these exact situations where there are babies not just disabled, but with the most serious disabilities that mean they will die maybe days after birth or 6 months after birth. We have evidence on mental health outcomes for the family. And that evidence very clearly shows that when you have an abortion in this situation, it is often felt and experienced as torture. The women often say it was torture to go through that late-term abortion for this disabled baby. And by contrast, when they have women who have been through this and given birth, 98% said, I made the right decision and I would do it all over again. Now, when they have a study comparing those groups, the women who kept the baby actually had far better mental health outcomes than the women who had abortions. And so even for your own peace of mind, whether you take into account the values or what's right and wrong at all, even for your own peace of mind and for your mental health and for not living with regrets, by far the clearest answer is to protect these children, to give them that short life, and also at the same time to advocate for policy that makes this care much more accessible to parents who are in that position.
Second last question. Most women don't regret their abortions.
It's very controversial. So there are certain studies that say, 95% of women don't regret their abortions. There's one main study in particular. When you look at that study, the Turnaway study, from the people they asked about this, the people they asked to participate in the questionnaire, the survey, and the research, I think it was something like 17% of the people asked ended up taking part and then completing the study. So they had a very high attrition rate, and we know that people who are most traumatized and have the worst experiences are the ones most likely to quit the study. So probably the women who regretted the abortions left the study, and that's why they don't show up. So that's a part of it. We also know that regret builds over time. There are studies showing that the longer after the abortion you ask a woman, her feeling of confidence about the decision actually declines. But also, we have a bias as humans to say, I have no regrets, I did the right thing. There are people who have done the most awful things that ruin their lives, and they clearly would have made a different decision if they knew. but they say no regrets just because it's a catchy catchy slogan, and
it's
it makes you feel
self-vindication, right? It's a vindication
exactly.
of self,
It makes you feel better about yourself, and so there's a bias towards that. But when we looked at the objective data about how happy people are, about what mental conditions they have, about whether they commit suicide, whether they have drug addictions, whether they have anxiety, whether they have post-traumatic stress disorder, whatever it is, the clear objective evidence, whatever they might say about regrets, is that the women who have abortions have worse mental health outcomes. And if you are someone suffering from that mental health condition, you're not going to be comforted much by the idea that you made the right decision. You're going to be comforted by preserving your mental health and healing from that decision. And that's ultimately what this is about.
I think a complementary a statistic on this is that for the women who chose to keep their babies despite adverse circumstances, never regretted keeping their babies in a bulk of the numbers polled. Do you know anything about this?
So the exact same study, the Turnaway study, the one that they say 95% of women, didn't regret having the abortion. When you actually study the women who were denied abortions, and everyone says these are women who are going to have their lives ruined, psychological torture, it's absolute torture to force a woman to give birth, etc. These women who were denied abortions, 5 years later when their child was 5, 98% of them said that they were glad they had the baby and they were denied the abortion. 98%. So the question is, if you have very high satisfaction levels either way, and maybe there's some doubts because of the attrition, but suppose it was 95 versus 98%. Firstly, go with the 98%. But secondly, if people are happy either way, don't kill the baby.
Don't kill the baby. Choose the life.
And it really is as simple as that.
Life will find a way.
Because it's not a competition between the mother's happiness and the child's happiness. If the mother's going to be happy and enjoy her life and have no regrets either way, let the baby live. There's no reason to end the baby's life.
Right. Perhaps a final word to Singaporeans who wish they had the courage to stand up for the pro-life cause, but have grown up in a culture that is almost entirely pro-choice, right? The idea of being pro-life is often scoffed at in Singapore's context. How would you encourage someone who feels that they ought to be standing for life in a more public and courageous way?
I would say, look, for me as someone in England, we are about 5% pro-life in this country. We're a tiny, tiny minority. I went from being pro-choice to being pro-life.
As did I.
Because it was the right thing to do.
As did I.
And so I would have lost career opportunities. I probably could have earned a lot more money, had a lot more prestige, gone a lot further in my medical career, my academic career. I'd probably have a paid academic position instead of a voluntary one. And yet I am so glad I did this, because this is the thing that gives me so much more fulfillment, because I know that what I'm doing is right and that it is an important part of being a life well lived. The question is, do we want to have a life well lived? And when you think about it, think about yourself maybe on your deathbed. If you believe in an afterlife, think about yourself in the afterlife. But even just on your deathbed, do you want to say, I made a lot of money, I did what made other people feel comfortable, I did what was convenient, I basically was a coward and never talked about what was right and wrong because I was scared of people and their judgment and what they would say. I think that if you got to the end of your life and you felt that way, you would be profoundly disappointed. And I think ultimately what all of us want deep down is to say, I'm glad about how my life went, and it was a life well lived, that really was a flourishing human being, that did the right thing, that was a model for other human beings. Now, I'm far from that, but I hope to get there someday. And hopefully that will be motivation for you to do the same thing, that when you look back at your life in 50, 60 years, you can say, what an impact I made, genuinely saving lives, doing the right thing, even when it meant sacrifice. And that was really a life that I truly thought was a life well lived.
So given all the sacrifices that you've made, really no regrets at all?
No regrets at all. None.
Dr. Calum Miller,
Thank you
very much.